Black History Month is our collective time to celebrate the achievements of African Americans and those of the African diaspora, and recognize their central role in U.S. history. Although Black history should be shared and celebrated year-round, the question often posed is, why do we celebrate Black history in February?
The story of Black History Month begins in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. That September, the Harvard-trained historian Carter G. Woodson and the prominent minister Jesse E. Moreland founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, an organization dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans and other peoples of African descent. That group sponsored a National Negro History Week in 1926, choosing the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass.
The event inspired schools and communities nationwide to organize local celebrations, establish history clubs, and host performances and lectures. By the late 1960s, thanks in part to the Civil Rights Movement and a growing awareness of Black identity, Negro History Week had evolved into Black History Month in many parts of the country. Black History Month, as we know it today, was officially recognized in 1976 by President Gerald Ford, who called upon the public to, quote, seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history.
As President Barack Obama said in a 2016 speech, Black History Month shouldn't be treated as though it is somehow separate from our collective American history. It's about the lived, shared experience of all African Americans, high and low, famous and obscure, and how those experiences have shaped and challenged and ultimately strengthened America.
At UT Southwestern, we have our own unique celebration of African American history and a special focus on the pioneering Black physicians and medical providers who shaped our growth into the 21st century. In the mid-20th century, Jim Crow laws were still in place in the United States. As it was across most of the nation, Black doctors in Dallas were not allowed to be on medical staff of Parkland, St. Paul, Baylor, or Methodist hospitals. As such, they were unable to provide modern hospital treatments for their patients, and they were excluded from hospital-sponsored educational programs. Black students were also excluded from Dallas colleges, Southwestern Medical College, and even the Dallas Public Library.
At this time, the only hospital facilities available to African American physicians in Dallas had been the Pinkston Clinic, a 15-bed clinic operated in historic Freedmantown, Dallas. In 1954, St. Paul Hospital became the first in Dallas to admit African American physicians to practice. The 5 physicians admitted were Dr. Lee G. Pinkston, Dr. Frank H. Jordan, Dr. Joseph R. Williams, Dr. William K. Flowers, and Dr. George L. Shelton. All of this occurred 8 to 10 years before the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Dr. Emmett J. Conrad, an acclaimed African American surgeon who came to Dallas in 1955, was quoted as saying, St. Paul opened its doors before the hospitals in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and all the so-called bastions of liberty.
As we honor the legacy of the great pioneers that opened so many doors for African American scientists and medical providers throughout our region and nation, we want to honor all of the individual journeys of African American employees, patients, and visitors that have made this institution great.
The theme of this year's Black History Month program is African American resilience and persistence, achieving great things and breaking barriers. We decided to center our program around this theme because we wanted to honor the pioneers of our past while celebrating the change agents of our future. During this time, we want to pay special attention to the stories, experiences, and journeys of our Black faculty and staff.
Now, this year has been one none of us could have predicted or prepared for. COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on many communities of color. Coupled with the compounding effects of xenophobia, police brutality, as well as economic and political stress, communities of color are experiencing heightened trauma. What we know from our history books and the stories of our grandparents, however, is that we are a people and a community that will always persevere.
This Black History Month, we want to showcase stories of persistence, resilience, and Black brilliance. You will hear from those who were the first at UT Southwestern and how they're working to ensure they aren't the last. Today, we celebrate the fact that the Black community persists and thrives because of, not despite, our identity.
I joined UT Southwestern as a medical student in 1982 and joined the faculty after residency in 1990. Black History Month has been important to me and in my community for as long as I can remember. It is an opportunity for us to share not only elements that is specific to the Black community, but it's American history. We can share the accomplishments of individuals who have similar backgrounds and experience that we've had so that we can share that with our children and others who might want insight into our life in the United States and how that may impact our future. Being the first Black graduate of UT Southwestern to join the faculty was not a plan. To have the internal drive, I guess you would say, to be a physician, I don't know where that came from. I always knew that I wanted to be a physician. My childhood physician is Dr. George Shelton, and I did not know for several years of the contribution he made to the Black community in Dallas. He was a group of 5 Black physicians that broke the medical color line in Dallas by joining the medical staff at St. Paul Hospital. We're very fortunate that the Daughters of Charity out of St. Louis thought it was important to have members of the African American community on the staff, and they could bring their patients to St. Paul. That happened in 1954. And when I saw some of the images of Dr. Shelton, Dr. Williams, Dr. Pinkston, and others, it was important that they had the professional foresight to say, I wanted to be a part of that first group that integrated a non-Black hospital in Dallas. The Pinkston Clinic was a collection of dedicated Black physicians in the 50s. And I was at the later portion of that, born being a child of the 50s. That clinic was 3 blocks from my house, and you had a number of primary care physicians at that point. You had surgeons. You had all of these resources in the Black community, for the Black community, to take care of the needs of individuals who had those normal healthcare issues and found limited opportunities in Dallas to see physicians, but to have a clinic for the people, by the people, taking care of the people was very powerful. So I'm a child of the 50s, and at that point, there were certain social dynamics that did not allow African American patients to have medical care in the same locations as other individuals in society. So being a child of the late 50s, I always tell people I was born at a Parkland facility because African Americans were either delivered in the basement of Parkland or in a side building. We did not have access to the regular wards. They had segregated wards, and Black patients just weren't allowed to deliver their children in the normal parts of the hospital. That has evolved over time. Now you see Parkland as a place where anyone who has a need can deliver in any of the clinical spaces. And I think that is truly indicative of the advances we've made in terms of healthcare access to communities who have been marginalized, under-resourced over the years. There are ancestors who prayed for me, prayed for this day that I will never know. Those individuals who survived the Middle Passage, those individuals who made it through slavery, who had child separation through slavery, the black codes, Jim Crow, segregated schools, they need to know that their history is woven deep within themselves. It's not necessarily easy to point out something in their genetic code that gives them that resilience, but it is important that you have someone who has lived the same tracks and has exhibited some of the same potential that I had in the 50s. It was true in the 60s, 70s, and it's true in 2021.
At the face of diversity, when I arrived in 1976 as a fellow and then went on to join faculty in 1977, was pretty amazing. For UT Southwestern, the number of women was really very small, and the number of African American students even smaller. And amazingly, the number of Mexican American students smaller than that. And so it really did not look like a very diverse community. I think one of the great things that I found was the opportunity, along with Dr. Sprague and Dr. Byron Williams, for whom the Student Center is named, and Dr. Urge Johnson, to really put together asking the question in terms of why there was not more diversity, and being given the challenge to try to change that trajectory for our institution. The initial diversity efforts at UT Southwestern were pretty grassroots. The pivotal event, I think, that took place here at UT Southwestern, and Dr. Ann Race, who was a psychiatrist on faculty at that time, worked with me, is that we carved out a time on Wednesday afternoons where students could choose any sort of activity, community-based activity that they would like to do. And that was sort of dedicated time for them to develop that community effort. I chair the Martin Luther King Scholarship Committee, and today we see our students just do outstanding and phenomenal community service. But I think that sort of evolved from that Wednesday afternoon experience. My statement early on was, I'm going to be a mentor to you, but I want you to promise to mentor others. We don't want to be here by ourselves in 15 or 20 years. And I'm excited to say diversity has gained its own on our campus.
It's my greatest joy being involved with the students. That was the highlight of my days, the engagement with the students, being able to communicate with them during their highs and their lows. So I really feel like that I've pursued my passion. I can recall when there were times during the admissions process of having only one minority student matriculate into the class, and that being a biracial student. And now I can truly say to this date that that number has increased immensely. I remained at UT Southwestern because of the environment, the support from the faculty that supported my growth and development here at the institution. So I never felt like an outcast. I always felt like if there was anything in my career path that I wanted to pursue to add to my skill set, that was supported by the faculty.
When I got here 17 years ago, of course, the campus was much smaller than it is now, perhaps half the size that it is now. And when I looked to leadership, I didn't see anyone who looked like me. That was important for me, I think, in terms of the composition of the workforce, having leadership that is kind of proportionate to that in some way, however you want to dice and cut it up, but still just having that representation is important. And so I think what my purpose has really morphed into being here, I feel like that is my purpose, is to kind of serve as a representative, to be that representation. The struggle of not being able to see people that look like me, who may have shared in similar experiences, not having those mentors that I can kind of call upon when certain situations happen. I would say the internal drivers within me, that fire that I think burns deep in my gut, really is just wanting change, wanting to see a level of progression and progress that my ancestors, again, could only dream about. You know, when I think about them and parallel with Black history, I think about the power of prayer, the power of purpose, the power of passion, the passion they must have had to really be change agents and trailblazers and pioneers in so many different industries and areas of life. The power of perseverance and persistence, and how that can ultimately lead to the power of progress.
We are truly standing on the shoulders of greatness. Join us this Black History Month and every month in honoring the everyday people who continue to do extraordinary things.